If you have a child with behavioral difficulties and you have tried all the things, welcome to the most helpful podcast you will listen to today.
And that's how I grew this very good mustache.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Nate Noble, Developmental-Behavioral Pediatrician, Clinical Geneticist, and today is the fourth in a four-part series entitled Parent Like a Pro Wrestler. Over the last 3 weeks, we have been talking about all kinds of different things leading up to this day, where we spend the next 50 minutes or so talking about how do you actually win? How do we take everything that we've talked about in the last 3 weeks and turn it into something that translates into a W for you as a parent? This is the culmination of the wax on, wax off. This is the point of the first half of the Karate Kid movie. It's understanding that all the things that we've been doing have a point and a purpose, and they all benefit you when it comes to actually being successful in addressing behavioral difficulties in your children. We take all the pomp and all the glory, and it meets the pragmatism of parenting using the pro wrestling metaphor. In week 1, as a brief recap, we did the backstage interview, and this is where we talked about the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequences, understanding what it is that actually leads your child to behave poorly. And in week 2, we talked about the entrance. This is the part where the pro wrestler walks into the stadium and everyone's chanting and everyone's excited. And this is the spot where we really get a good look at the wrestler in general. And this is where we talked about the 4 pillars of behavioral change. In week 3, we talked about the match. This is when we split the ropes and we get into the ring and we actually get ready to fight by sizing up our opponent to better understand what is the function of the behavior: escape, attention, or tangible. And now we're in week 4, the finishing move. This is the spot where we exploit the weakness of the behavior for the win. This is the spot that everyone in the audience is waiting for. It's where you are going to get to use your signature move to pin this behavior to the mat and send the audience, the cul-de-sac, your family, your coworkers, the people at the water cooler into a frenzy of excitement because you have demonstrated mastery over one behavior on one day. The finishing move: exploit the weakness, my friends. Let's get into it. Some of you don't understand what I mean by finishing move because you're not familiar with pro wrestling, but this is the move that makes the wrestler famous. The Undertaker had the tombstone pile driver. Shawn Michaels had sweet chin music. Tito Santana was off the top rope. This is what makes them famous. This is the move that when they see it, the audience knows the end is nigh. This is your move to end it. Using what we've learned, the wax on, wax off stuff, this is no longer a discussion about why they do what they do. Today is a discussion about what. What are we going to do when they make their moves? Reminders. Like a referee, I have to give you a few reminders before we get into this. We are not wrestling children. For those of you new to the podcast, you're new to the YouTube space, and you're listening to this, and you're thinking, well, I'm against wrestling children. It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor. Go back and watch the other ones. I promise it will make a little bit more sense. And understand that today we're focusing on behaviors. There's not bad kids, there's just poor choices, right? There's not bad kids, there's just bad behaviors. So we're going to talk about how we can put in place strategies that will quickly end the biggest problems in your life. Now, that doesn't mean that new problems won't pop up almost immediately. They will, because remember, we've talked about this many times before. If you have an old car and you take it into a mechanic, when you drop it off at the mechanic and pick it up later, it may be fixed. The one thing that was wrong may be better or different, but you still have an old car. You still have a child who does not wake up every day thinking about how they can make you feel good about yourself. These strategies will work, but you have to remember a few things. Please understand, my friends, the strategies that we're discussing will work, but they are simple, right? The best things in life are simple and they will work. But if you go through these steps and you find that they are not working for you, there's one of 3 problems that I want to address with you before we begin, okay? The first of which is you've got the wrong outcome. All right. You've got this idea that if I do the thing that I watched on the YouTube video or listened to the doctor or listened to the podcast, or I took the class or read the book or did the thing in church or whatever it was, that you go into what you're thinking, if I do the thing, the outcome will be no more behavior. And we just kind of smashed that one. Remember, these are kids. And it's not ever, behaviors are never going to go away. They're just going to change, right? Number 2, if you do these things and they're not working, you probably are putting in potentially the wrong effort. Remember from last week, you're not running to run. You're not running a marathon to run it. Like, oh, I ran a marathon and somebody gave me a t-shirt and a banana, right? You're running to win, to get the trophy. And that requires a level of effort that is likely foreign to many of you because these behaviors are so firmly entrenched in the psyche of your child that they're not going to break easily. And the third reason why maybe these things aren't working for you is because it's the wrong battle, right? You've chosen the wrong battle. Listen, I can't help you if you watch these videos and you say, well, I've tried that. Well, listen, try again. Try smarter, okay? If your situation is special, if you're watching this video and you're like, wow, my situation is just astronomically more different and special. And you know what? It probably is. But what I want you to do is remember that you are not terminally individualistic, okay? I learned this from the recovery community. If you believe that your problems and your difficulties and your struggles and stressors as it relates to your children are so unique and so specialized and so difficult and so different that no one could possibly speak into your life, I can't help you. Okay, that's called terminal individualism. And I promise you, there are people in your community, there are people in your atmosphere, there are people on the internet, there are people in Facebook groups, there are people who can finish your sentences. Don't fall prey to this idea that you are the only one in the world with these specific kinds of problems that no one could possibly relate. If you feel that way and you choose to believe that, I can't help you. And if you want a quick and easy, comfortable fight, then you have to understand that I also can't help you. You have to remember that fights are uncomfortable. And make no mistake, friends, this is a fight for the character of your child. If you just want something easy and simple, this is not for you. And then lastly, if you don't want to change, you don't want to change. You're like, I've tried everything. I've done all these things, blah, 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 blah. I'm not really in the mood to try and change this. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not going to do these things. Listen, I respect that. But please understand that if you don't want to change, this is a complete waste of your time. Because remember, we're not just asking your child to change. I'm asking you to change in how you respond to your child's behavior. So if you agree with these things and you've ruled yourself out effectively and you're still watching this video, let's do this. Last week you got in the ring. We circled our opponent. Okay? We're using what we learned today to anticipate their moves and get ready for the big finish. Remember, there are 3 reasons why they're doing the thing that you hate: escape, attention, and tangible. And the truth is, they can be doing many of these things at the same time. It's rare that they show up with just attention or just escape or just tangible. So we're going to take each one of these functions one by one, okay? And we're going to dissect it as best we can so that it's applicable to the vast majority of people who watch this. But again, this is not meant to be granular and specific. You're going to have to extrapolate this information and apply it to your lives and the behaviors that you're navigating in your home and in your community that apply to you, to your capacity. And I'm going to try and give you some guidance along the way, but this is not a one-size-fits-all. This is really just road signs that help you understand if you're moving towards the land of neutralizing a behavior or potentially making it better, or if you're heading towards the land of, hey, you're probably just going to make this worse, okay? So let's start with escape. Okay, if you've identified this as a primary function for your child, this is how you're going to get the first win of our discussion today. So let's start with a question. If you believe that your child has an escape-based function, you have to start the behavioral intervention, the strategy, the finishing move, has to start with a question. And don't get mad at me. The question is simply this: is it worth it? Is this fight worth it? That's a strange question. That's a strange question. You're thinking, well, it's important because I say it's important, Noble. And I'm going to say to you, I don't think so. I don't think so. I want to lovingly push back on you because I'm going to tell you a few stories to convince you. Listen, when I did my training in developmental pediatrics and clinical genetics, I did it at the University of Iowa, and it was great. It was wonderful. And I came from a community-based program. From in residency. So there wasn't a lot of research going on. There wasn't those kinds of things. It was just, you were learning how to take care of kids. And then I went to an academic environment because I was going to become a specialist. I was going to do research and all the things that I in turn used to make YouTube videos. So I guess that's time well spent. But I was there and I'd never seen, in the university setting, I'd never seen grant season. I didn't know what grant season. When I knew about, opening day of baseball or football season or basketball season or track or whatever it is, or golf season, but I didn't know about grant season. And grant season is the season when requests for proposals would come out and there'd be a timeline, and then everybody who was in the research world would apply for these grants. And this was a very stressful time for a lot of people. And at the university setting, there are a lot of individuals that I was serving in the developmental pediatrics fellowship that I was doing who had children who were struggling. And they were especially struggling during grant season because both parents were MDs and PhDs, and they were both working on grants. They had a child, and they had some difficulties they wanted to discuss with me. And this is an example of the question of worth. I was in the clinic one day, and I had just left a room where there was an individual who was really having a tough time, didn't have a lot of verbal skills, was increasingly aggressive, taking off their clothes, a lot of head banging, really, really problematic behaviors, right? A lot of things that we needed to fight and we needed to target and we needed to deal with. And then I went into another room, and there were two MD PhDs in the room. And they were wonderful, and they were sweet, and they were stressed. And I said, guys, how can I help? Tell me what's going on. They said, well, we have a big, big problem with our son named Johnny, we'll say. And I said, well, tell me, what's the problem? Keep in mind, I had just left a room where a child was really struggling with behavioral difficulties, like really, really struggling. And I'm thinking, okay, this must be a juicy one because you can still hear this child shrieking in the other room. And I said, well, tell me what's the big problem? What's Johnny up against? They said, well, Dr. Noble, we're struggling because we can't get Johnny to practice the oboe. And it was just one of those moments where you're just like, again, I can still hear the child screaming and banging in the next room. Okay, as the family's trying to get him dressed and get him moving on to the next appointment. And I'm thinking, I almost had to ask him again. It's like, okay, so tell me a little bit. I grew up on a gravel road, 7 miles west of a small town in northwest Iowa. Okay, suffice to say, we didn't have an airport, really. We had maybe we had maybe one gas station, not really a lot of red lights. You know what we didn't have? We didn't have an orchestra. Didn't have one of those. Okay, we had a jazz band. We had a very, very, very subpar show choir that I was a part of, but we didn't have the opportunity to familiarize ourselves with the glorious instrument called the oboe. So of course I had to ask. So I said, I'm not exactly sure what that is. And so they had to show me some pictures and things like this. And I was thinking, oboe, like this is what you want to fight right now, is the oboe. And maybe for you, it is the oboe. Maybe for you, it's the oboe. But what I want you to do is you start the process of evaluating a child with an escape-based strategy. You have to ask the question of worth. Is this worth it? For you, it might not be an oboe. Okay, it might not be an oboe. It might be something like, well, he doesn't empty out his lunchbox, or he doesn't put his shoes in the cubby. Okay, if that's all we're got to deal with, then let's deal with it, right? Let's lower the boom. Let's split the ropes. Let's get in the ring. Let's take this behavior to the floor. But we have to start with asking ourselves the question of worth. Is this worth it? Because before you fight, you have to understand the value of what you're fighting for. So if you're like me, but you're going to need a little bit of guidance on this because, again, a lot of people do. So let me give you 5 kind of filters to run this through, okay, that I would suggest to you are probably worth it in the fight. And spoiler alert, oboe's probably not one of them, okay? Filter number 1, does the behavior that you're thinking about fighting, does the escape-based strategy that you're thinking about fighting, does it break the connection? Does it break the connection between you and the child? Is there a collective like inhale and breath hold when the child comes into a room and the snacks aren't right? Or you have to give a very firm no, or you know there's a transition coming up and you know the child's going to try and run away because they don't want to do the thing, like, and it makes you dislike the time you spend with this child. That's what I mean by breaking the connection. If that's what you got, that's a problem. Okay. Another filter to think about is the behavior crosses the respect line. Okay. Now, and that can be hard to define. Okay. And every family's going to do a little bit differently, but you don't want to raise a child in an environment where they're not only that they not have to do what they don't want to do, they can disrespect anybody they want in the process. Right. So that's not going to be an acceptable behavior. That's something that you might want to think about fighting. Another filter to think about is, does this behavior hurt people or property, right? Like if the child really doesn't want to wear their helmet, well, that's could potentially lead to a hurting of people or property. They're going to hurt their beautiful skull when they wipe out on your driveway, right? So that might be something that we fight. The next one is kind of similar to that, where it's just generally unsafe. Like the child Doesn't want to jump with the trampoline with the nets in place. And so the nets either have to be up or you can't jump on the trampoline. They're going to run, they're going to do these things. Like, it's unsafe. And then lastly, it's unsanitary, right? So like the thing that you are doing or refusing to do or running away from leads to an unsanitary situation like teeth brushing or hair washing or showering. Right. So that's just some filters that you can use to think about. Is this behavior an oboe situation that maybe I should just let go? Or is it like a helmet situation and I should probably fight to the death? But before you fight, please, 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 please filter. Okay, we don't want to be people who just fight everything to the death because you said it or because that your family paradigm is like, well, in our family we do it this way. Remember, we talked about this in other episodes. Don't live your life like that. Please don't. I mean, there's times and places for all things. Okay, I'm not trying to tell you how to live your life, but in the realm of parenting, if you're watching these videos, things are not going well. They're not going well. If they're going well, I don't know why you're watching this. I have no idea. Okay, but filter. Give yourself a break. Don't fight everything that your child escapes from. Ask yourself the question: is this worth it? Is this fight worth it? The next question you have to ask yourself is: can you win? Yep, I said it. It's a New Year's and you just quit smoking and you moved into a single bedroom apartment and you have 5 roommates and your car just broke down and you're starting a new job tomorrow and grandma's dying in a hospice bed on in your living room. Yeah, those are not good times for you to fight stuff. Okay. There's things you have to fight for sure. I'm not saying you roll over in those environments, but you have to ask yourself, can I win this battle right now? Or do I table it for another day? And again, so how can you know? How can you know? No, well, I don't have any of those things happening in my life. So, okay, let me give you some win filters. Okay. Let me run it through one more set of filters before we get into the juice of this. Okay. The stability filter. Are you fighting on stable ground? Are you fighting on stable ground? Are you healthy as a parent? Are you connected with a spouse? Are you fighting not only your child's behaviors but your spouse's behaviors? Are you unstable from a job perspective or from your own mental health? Right? If the answer is no, then think long and hard. Maybe this is not a battle you can win right now, and we table it. Regulation is another filter that I want you to run it through. Can you be in this moment cool, calm, and collected? All right. Can you be in charge of your emotions? I mean, I sometimes, if my kids listen to this, sometimes I lose control of my emotions. And then I got to kind of go back and clean it up because I say things that I don't mean. I get really frustrated because I'm parenting off my back. You know the kind of parents that scream? You know the ones that scream? It's not, these are people that are parenting on empty. They're parenting from their back, right? If the first thing a child hears from you is a scream, it's because you're on reserve, so you don't have a lot left. All right. Then the first thing they should hear when an altercation is erupting in your home is not you screaming; it's you moving towards them. Right. And maybe you're announcing that with your voice, but if you're screaming, you're not regulated, and you may not be in a spot where you can win. All right. Can you follow through? Right. If you can't enforce this tomorrow, then I would encourage you, don't enforce it today unless it's absolutely necessary from a safety standpoint. Can you follow through? Can you reasonably follow through on the necessary steps, which it might not make sense to you now until we talk about all these behavioral strategies, but I want you to go back and listen to this. Can you follow through? Because inconsistency in dealing with these things is really problematic in winning. It's really problematic. We have to present ourselves as people who are going to be the same yesterday, tomorrow, and today. We're going to be consistent as the day is long. Can you follow through? Is this child escaping? This is the next question, the filter I want you to run through is this child escaping from something that they can't do? Is this a skill problem? Right? Well, it's hard to quantify that. I don't know your child, but sometimes I see families, they're asking their children to do things that the child can't do. That, as I've said before, children, a 3-year-old is not going to clean the room. A 3-year-old is going to pick up one sock and put it in a hamper, like a dirty clothes thing, while you stand there and point. Okay. Skill. Is this a skill problem or is it a will problem? If it's a skill problem, you don't want to punish that. You don't want to punish something that you want to lower what it is you're asking for, not because you're phoning it in, but because you want your expectations to accurately reflect your child's skill sets. Or is it a will-based problem where they're just willfully disobeying you and they're running away because they refuse to do something they could easily do? And then that's a filter you want to run it through, because then you've got a fight on your hands. Is this a priority? Is this big issue a priority? This is another filter. Okay. Does this need to be a priority right now? Okay. And then lastly, what is your plan? If you engage in this behavior, do you have a plan, and are you ready to enact it? And if the answer is yes to 4 out of these 6 of these, any 4 of the 6, then you pass the filter and you're ready to get to work, okay? So here we go. First, we started with the question of worth. Is this worth it? The second is the question of aptitude. Like, can I win right now? We just went through a few filters on how to determine that. In an escape-based strategy, if you want to pin that behavior to the floor, the next step, the third step, is to give the choice. Yep, because you've split the ropes, you're in the ring, you've identified the function of the behavior, you're ready with your finishing move. It's time to do this, and it starts now. Give the choice. Key is in the outcome. Let me give you an example. So many times when you're dealing with behaviors in children, particularly escape-based behaviors, families make the mistake of giving really dumb choices. Here's what I remember from residency. I live in Iowa, and there's the state fair, and the state fair is really a big deal. And if you're here, you should come and check it out. It's amazing. But the state fair is always like 1,000 degrees, and the parking's can be difficult, and you gotta, So if you show up at the state fair with a child, okay, you spend a lot of time, energy, and resources to get to the state fair. And when kids go into the state fair, the first thing they see is the people who have the pop-up kind of tents, we'll call them, and they're selling garbage, okay? And they're always like light up swords, or like big foam hands or something, just stuff that's targeted towards children. And the children see this right when they get to the state fair. They haven't had a bucket of cookies. They haven't had any delicious sourdough donuts. They haven't had any of the other tasty treats. They just want to blow all the money that the family has on a light up sword that you could probably buy on Amazon for $1, but they're going to sell it to you for $25. And the kids start to cry, and then the family member turns to the child and says, "Do you want to stop crying like a baby?" Option A. Or should we leave the state fair? Option B. Okay. There's a number of problems with those choices. Number one, they're both dumb. It doesn't matter which one you choose, right? There's no common metric that binds them together. This is a bad example of choices, because if you give a child a choice to stop acting like a baby, they're going to keep acting like they don't care. They don't care, or what? And the other option is, because they're no dummies, you're not going to leave the state fair. You're not going to get back on a bus and drive back to the state capitol and do the thing and wait 40 minutes to get back in the car and drive away. You're not going to do it. Both of those options, either A, the child's going to laugh at because they know they've got you, or B, they know you're never going to do. Those are examples of choices that are really, really bad. And if you're a parent, you have given these choices many, many times. Here's an example of a time when I have a daughter who's now 15, okay? And my wife was gone on a trip this was many years ago, and she went on a trip with her friends to do something at a conference. And I decided, in my majestic wisdom, to make a double batch of chocolate chip cookies, and we ate those cookies all day, and it was incredible. And at the end of the day, it was time to brush our teeth and go to bed. And my daughter is in front of the vanity, and I say, "Open your mouth so I can brush your teeth." And she refuses, teeth clenched. And I said to her, "Okay, I'm going to remember, this is an escape-based strategy. She does not want to do this. Your child doesn't want to wear a seatbelt. Your child doesn't want to wear a helmet. Your child doesn't want to do their homework. Whatever it is that they're trying to get away from, right? You run it through the filters, which we discussed. Ailey does not want to brush her teeth. Is this worth it? Yeah, it is. Yep. Can I win? Absolutely, I can win. Give the choice. I said to her, "Do you want to open your mouth so I can brush your teeth? And then we can go to your room, we can read books, and it'll be this great big thing, and we'll say some prayers, and it'll be awesome. Or do you want me to open your mouth? And you will choke and gag, and you might puke, and I'll brush your teeth. And then I'll take you into your room, and I'll put you in your bed, and I'll leave you in a dimly lit room, alone, with a witch and a raccoon." Those are the choices I gave her. Hey, okay, she's a kid. So guess what she chose? Yep, she chose option B. She says, "I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it." So what I did was I said, okay, I dug back deep into my medical education, remember that the nose and the mouth and the lungs are connected somehow. Somehow it's all connected. There's a common pathway. I don't really understand it. And so I said, okay, I'm going to open your mouth and I'm going to brush your teeth. So she clenched her teeth down. So I reached up and I plugged her nose like this. Okay. And then she opens her mouth to take a breath and I brush her teeth. I'm brushing her teeth. It wasn't a great teeth brush sesh. Okay. She's crying. She's mad. I had to get in there and do the job, right? There's probably, just layers and layers of chocolate and grossness on those teeth. And I put her in bed and I walked out of the room and I gave a quiet over the shoulder nod to the witch and the raccoon and I left. That's a metaphor. There was no rich, no raccoon. Just calm down. And the next day we do the same thing all over again. We live our lives. We do our things. We get back to the vanity. I give her the same choices. What does she choose this time? She chooses option A. Okay. She understands this guy is crazy and he's not going to back down. He's going to fight to the death. Okay. He's going to fight to the death. And the reason why is because I cared about what? I cared about the metric. When you think about an escape-based strategy, you have to double down on what is the metric? What is the outcome that I want? Not the style. Okay? When you're on a cul-de-sac and you feel like people are watching and peeking through your windows all the time, you're probably thinking more about style than you are about outcome. You want to look the part. When your child's talking back to you at a restaurant or when you're out at your competitive soccer match or whatever at a Holiday Inn somewhere and they're like, I'm going to sleep in Jonathan's room because Jonathan's parents are cool, whatever it is. Okay? It's so tempting to dial down your parenting because you don't like the style of what this appears for other people to view. Okay. But what I want you to understand when you're talking about an escape-based strategy, after you run it through these metrics, I don't care about style. I care about outcomes. Okay. To go back to that story, the metric here is teeth brushed. One is a style that I like. One is a style that I don't, but I'm not here to judge style. I'm here to judge outcome. So do you want to open your mouth? Should I brush your teeth? Or do I open your mouth and brush your teeth? What do I care about? Not style. I care about outcome. Okay. Remember, we're not running to run. We're running to win. So run it through those filters, make your decisions, give smart choices, and fight to the death. Okay. All right. Next up, we're going to talk about the function of attention. Now, listen, this one should be easy. This one should be easy because it's easy to spot this one. You can see this one a mile away. It starts out small and cute in the clinic. This is how it starts. Small and cute. I'm good with kids. I'm playing with the boo. Hey, how are you? You're a nice guy. Oh, wow. You seem really powerful. Oh, good shoes. Those are great boots. Blah, blah, blah. And then it just kind of escalates. I start to talk to the parents. Kid starts to get more and more wild, right? Because they like the attention to be on them. It's not just, and it's not just attention, but it's certain types of attention, right? So sometimes it's not just everyone looking at a child, right? And like being like, oh, there's a child. Let's stare at this child. Sometimes it's they want a certain type of attention. And the minute it becomes a type of attention they don't want, well, then the tide turns and things get ugly. Like recently I had a child playing in the clinic and we had a great interaction initially. And I thought this is going to be great. I built rapport with the child. I'm able to talk to the parents. It's going to be great. But the kid, every time I tried to divert my attention to the mom, the child behaviors would slowly escalate, even when I'm giving an inordinate amount of attention. Like I'm really trying to give the kid attention. And eventually the kid's behaviors got so out of hand that he was going to hurt himself. He's going to fall off an exam table and break his face. So I just redirect him away from that activity. Kid punches me in the face. Yep. I have not gotten tagged very many times in my career. And that was recent. And I thought, oh my goodness. Whenever I redirect this kid, he jacks me. Whenever people redirect this kid and give him the type of negative reinforcement, kind of that negative attention, right? That I see you, but I'm asking you to live a different life, they get frustrated. And what I want you to understand is attention-seeking behaviors are attention-seeking behaviors. If it's all about me all the time, or I just get irritated when there's certain kinds of attention, it doesn't really matter. Okay. What I want you to understand is there's really only one way to deal with attention-seeking behaviors. Okay. And it always starts here. Let's start with something nice. Let's be nice. It starts with teaching a child how to get your attention. If you haven't had a conversation with your child about how to insert a thought when you're having a conversation with someone else. Could be a sibling, could be your spouse, could be another adult, doesn't really matter. You've got to take time to teach them how to insert their thoughts into a conversation in a way that's respectful. Okay. It's essentially like outlining the wrestling ring. Like, these are the rules. These are the boundaries. Don't cross them. And if you have something you need to tell me, do it this way. So you always want to make this your objective. You want them to understand that they're valuable and that they're worth your attention, but they don't get to take up all of your attention. They're not more important than everybody else in the room. When the rules aren't followed, okay, when you've laid it out, you've been very specific with them about what it is you expect and how to get your attention in appropriate ways. When those rules aren't followed, now it's go time. Now we're in the ring, we're starting to fight. And that starts with a very simple understanding. When you have a child who's an attention seeker and they're doing it for all the wrong reasons, the first move is a tsunami removal of attention. You, my friends, become robots. Yeah, you become robots. Like in the Terminator. Like in the Terminator, like that when Arnold Schwarzenegger, you maybe don't remember this, but there's a movie called The Terminator, and there's this robot. And Arnold Schwarzenegger was the robot. And this thing, it had like one purpose, one goal, right? And it was to get this lady. And it didn't give a lot of attention to anything else. When you are enacting a tsunami removal of attention for a child who is an attention seeker, your responses have to become increasingly robotic, because you can't keep pouring attention on an attention seeker or it won't work. We all know this. We all know that you have to remove attention. We all know that you need to be robotic. You can't like do a bunch of when you I feel statements and take them to another room and read books to them until they calm down, because you're only making it worse. You're only rewarding the behavior. Everybody knows this. Okay. So why doesn't this work? Well, it's because, I'm going to say the obvious. In order to remove attention from a child, you actually have to remove attention from a child. Yep. Let me explain. Not a timeout chair. You can't put little Johnny Pumpkins in a timeout chair and be like, well, Johnny, you sit in that chair until I come over here and get you. What's Johnny going to do? The minute you walk away from that chair, you know what he's going to do. Say it with me. He's going to get up. He's going to get out of that chair. He's going to start turning the lights off. He's going to stick his hand in the trash can. He's going to try and eat an old bagel from 2 days ago just to get you all fired up. He's going to get in the litter box. He's going to act like an animal. He's going to climb on the... He's going to do crazy stuff because it results in you stopping what you're doing, coming back to Johnny, and yelling at him. So what's happening here? No one has removed attention from Johnny. No one. Johnny's winning, and you, my friends, are losing. You don't want to give a bunch of warnings. You don't want to put him in a timeout chair and rinse and repeat over and over, because you never remove attention, right? It's not fake. You don't just ignore them halfway. You don't fake ignore them until things escalate to the point where you scream and blow out that vessel in your eyeball, right? You don't do that. What this often is going to mean for you is that Johnny needs to be removed from the space entirely. Okay, he needs to go to a different space. Johnny needs to go to the Polk County Jail. Okay, the Polk County Jail is a place where people who need a timeout go. Okay, they need a timeout. They need to go in there and they need to think about their lives. And they get to come out when we say that their timeout's done. And Johnny is no different. Often we have to put people in a separate space. But what you have to understand is there are times when you don't have a separate space. When you're out at a friend's house, you're out in the community, you're out at the play gym. And I'm going to talk to you about what you do when you have a separate space and what you do when you do not have a separate space. I'm going to give you a few examples. So let's start with the separate space. So maybe you're at home or you're at your in-laws' house, your mom and dad's house, and something goes wrong and the child clearly just needs everyone's attention and is willing to risk whatever it takes to get it. But what you have to understand in order to begin is that you have to find that space where this child can go, okay? And that child needs to go there. And that's not a timeout chair in the same room. That is a separate space. The child goes away, and as they go away, the first thing that I want you to remember is back to the robot. They're going away. You're in the process of helping them go away. But when you do that, it's important that they receive from you that you are not particularly interested about this situation. You're not overwhelmed. Remember, you're cool, calm, and collected. Put them away. You're not worried about this. You're not crying about this. They don't overwhelm you. No, you're just going to take their pieces off the chessboard. You're fine. You have taught them and they didn't listen. You gave them opportunities on how to interrupt and how to make their voice known and how to be respectful, and they didn't heed you. So the only question you have to ask them, okay, is how do you want to go to your separate space? You want to go with your feet on the ground, or do you want to go with your feet in the air? I don't really care. I'll give you 30 seconds as I hold on to you for you to decide what's your next move, right? And it doesn't matter, because they're not going to change the outcome. The outcome is they need to be removed. If you have to drag them to the separate space, if they have to walk through on their own, it does not matter. But you let them have a 30 seconds to make their decision, and if they don't choose, it's dealer's choice, baby. And I always like dragging them. Just take them right away. They need to understand that you're not inconvenienced by this at all. You're just giving them what they ordered off the menu of life. And remember, define the metric and give smart choices. It's no different. The metric is this child needs to go away. Attention needs to be removed from this child because they're not shepherding it well. And then you give smart choices. How would you like us to do this? You want to do it? You want to walk with your head held high and go to the room and do your time? Or do you want to be drugged out of the courtroom sobbing and crying? Which one is it? But either way, it does not matter. You go to the room. And when they go to the room, okay, you put them in the space and you shut the door. Yep, I said it. How else are you going to remove attention from these kids? I mean, can we just be honest for a minute? How are you really going to do that? It's hard for me right now to see the people in the Polk County Jail. It's really difficult for me. Maybe there's a live stream, I guess I can watch. But in general, I just know they're in there, right? They're doing their time. They're going to get out when their time is done. So you start the timer. You put them in there and you start the timer because you want to make this objective. They need to know that they are not left, that you are still there. You are present and available. You are right outside that door doing what? What are you doing outside that door? Two things. Number one, holding the door shut. Number two, going on with your life. So if there's a movie being watched, it keeps getting watched. If there's a game that can be played in the hallway with the rest of the family while this child cools off in 5-minute increments, then let it be. Their turn just gets skipped. We don't put the world on pause because people are in the Polk County Jail. I still go to work. I still make incredible podcasts, whatever it is. See what I mean? They have to understand that the world continues to turn, that no one is waiting on bated breath for them to get their act together. And you start the timer because we don't want them to believe that you are making this up. You set it for 5 minutes. You go about your business. They're in there screaming. Maybe they hear you say, I hear you. I'll be back. I'll open this door in 5 minutes. You open the door. Okay, after 5 minutes, as they hear the timer go off, because you're making this as objective as possible, and you walk into the room, and they're screaming, because how dare you not pay attention to them? And then they throw a shoe at you. Okay, here's my question to you, friends. Are they done with their timeout? Nope, I don't think so. Say, okay, I see you're not done. I see you're not done with the timeout. Let's just go ahead and slide that baby up to 5 minutes again and shut the door. Now they're really going to go berserk. Now they're really mad at you. Now we're finally starting to get somewhere, right? You're starting to see some cracks in the facade. You see, this is your finishing move. The audience is watching. This is going to work, right? They know what they did, and they know when you're coming back, right? But here are some of the most common objectives that I hear from people all the time when I tell them to do this very straightforward procedure. Number one, people say they won't stay in the room. What do I say? Hold the door shut. Number two, they say, well, but they'll destroy their room. Okay, well, let's talk about that. The room that you choose needs to be safe. It's sad that I even need to say that, but it's true. If you've got a room in your home and it's full of swords and big giant televisions on really old junky stands that you can just pull over and crush children, or if there's like boa constrictors in there, that's probably not a safe room. I wouldn't do that room, okay? I would put them in their own room and I would remove all articles that they could use as a weapon against you. So yeah, their flat screen TV. Yeah. That's going to have to be removed. Rep. All the little stuffy animals, yeah, because they're just going to tear them up and throw them. All their toys. I mean, if they end up initially with just a mattress on the floor until they can learn to respect everybody else in their house, just for a brief period of time. Remember, this is about metric. The metric is I remove attention. The child learns that they're not the most important person in every environment all the time. But I don't like the way the room looks because it doesn't look like Pottery Barn Kids. I can't help you. You don't get Pottery Barn Kids and children who understand they're not the sun and the moon of your home. You can't always have it both ways, friends. You can get back to Pottery Barn Kids. You can get back to all that, the color-coordinated pillows and all those wooden puzzles that were made by hand that don't have any lead in them, which is great. But you can put all those back in the room later. Right now, it's Polk County jail time. They're going in there to cool off, right? While the world continues to turn around them. They will destroy the room. You will lose the insurance deposit on your rental agreement. They will put holes in the drywall. They will do whatever it takes. And when they do that, and you know they're safe, and you know that they know you're there, and you've not left them, and you're coming back in 3 or 5 minute increments, doesn't really matter. And they hear the sound go off. Everyone's safe. Everyone's accounted for. The child, eventually, these behaviors will start to cool. But the world must keep turning. Don't let them be the center. And you rinse and repeat. This is not a one-time strategy. You rinse and repeat. You may have to do it over and over and over and until they go to bed, until they realize that you don't get to monopolize every situation. And people say, well, this is cruel. This is cruel. Okay, well, this isn't for you. Because you know what I think is more cruel? Refusing to discipline your child because you think their inner person is so delicate that they can't handle it. What kind of world do you think is waiting for your children? The kind of world where they're like, oh, you want to talk again? Oh, you want to tell another story about you? I just mentioned that I went to a restaurant. Now I have to listen to you talk for 20 minutes about a time that you went to a restaurant. Listen, I'm sure that's a wonderful story, but no, I want your child to be successful. I want them to be good partners and good coworkers and good members of society. Okay, we can't let them dictate the way through this world based solely on how they feel about the way everyone pays attention to them. That's not where I want them to find their value and worth. So before you get on this train of telling me I'm mean and wrong, we've ensured that this room is safe. We've made it very objective. There's a timer that goes off. They know they're not forgotten. They know they're not alone. They know you're on the other side of that door, and they know why they got put in there to begin with. And they know when they're done, when they're calm. When you're calm, stop throwing shoes at the door, and we can have a very clear conversation about what it is that got us put in here and review the ways that we get attention that are positive, that are reasonable, okay? And what's going to happen if we can't get it together and how we're going to go right back in. Think about it like having a discussion before we get out of jail about what parole is going to look like. Rinse and repeat, friends. Rinse and repeat. Okay. So let's talk briefly before we move on to our last function of behavior. I want to talk to you very briefly about, well, what do you do if you have to give a timeout type scenario in a situation where you don't have a separate room or a separate space? Well, this is not unlike the kid who punched me in the clinic. Okay, here's what we did. First thing I did, if you're a provider watching this or a parent or you're watching somebody else, I got permission from the mother to conduct the strategy that I'm about to share with you. The first thing I did after I got permission from mother was I removed this child's freedom of body. So what I did was I restrained him. Yep. He was coming at me. He's belligerent. He was dangerous. Okay. And I asked mom's permission to hold him in a position where he would not be a danger to himself or other people. And she readily agreed. And as soon as I removed the freedom of his body with restraint, I removed my attention of mind. So I removed the freedom of body and I removed the attention of the mind. I continued to talk to that mother like this situation was not even happening. Wasn't even happening. The kid's in, he's trying to come at me. He's trying to bash me in the back. He's trying to take his head into my face. He's trying to do all these things. And he's safe. I'm not hurting him. I'm keeping him safe. I'm keeping me safe until he can calm. And I'm modeling this behavior to his mother, right? remove attention of mind, remove freedom of body. So sometimes you have to hold these kids in a spot where they don't get their hands back until they can learn how to be respectful. I will give you attention when you're conducting yourself in a manner that's worthy of that attention. But if you just want to dictate what kind of attention every time I redirect you, you don't appreciate that and you get aggressive, what kind of world are you going to enter into, my friend? You're going to actually end up in the Polk County Jail. So I asked him multiple times as I'm having a conversation with his mother, are you done? And he would say yes. And then I would say, do you know what done looks like? Because if we release you and I give you freedom of your body back and you come at your mom or me and try and hurt us, what's going to happen to you? And then he says, you're going to hold me again. I said, yes, I am. And so we had to do that 3 or 4 times before he understood that there is a different way to live your life. And mom understood as well. And it was difficult, and that's not fun, and I don't want that for anybody. But I've also seen situations in the clinic where I'm talking to a mom, and I say, well, when he hits you, what do you do? And the mom says, well, the therapist tells me just to ignore it. And then the kid comes up and smacks the mom in the face. What do you think I did? Removal of freedom of body, removal of freedom of mind. I remove those things. I'm not paying attention to you in my mind, and I'm removing your body from this equation until you can learn to respect yourself and other people. I said to the mother, well, your therapist isn't here. That's ridiculous. That's crazy. I'm not going to have a kid punching their mom in the face. And mom's just like, they told me to ignore it while she's like sobbing. No! Rinse and repeat. Now, maybe you're thinking, well, my kid's too big. Okay, you're going to have to bring friends. Well, maybe you'll find a bunch of different things about what I've just said that's not going to work for you. But remember, go clear to the beginning of this podcast. If you're going to fall prey to this idea of terminal individualism, how your situation is so special and so unique that nobody can help you, then nothing I say is going to help you. Nothing anybody says is going to help you. So figure out what I have said that is useful and put that in place. Okay. If it's an attention-based strategy, there are some semblance of what I've told you that will work. Okay. Now for our third and final finishing move. The kids who are tangibly motivated. These are kids that are business people. You know them. You love them. They'll bang their head for access to a phone or for a Tootsie Roll or for a bite of I don't know what it is. I mean, for a piece of garbage from the Dollar General store. They don't care. They do not care. As long as they can get something for their trouble, they will keep doing it. These are the what's in it for me kids. The way you start with addressing a child is acknowledging their economy. What have they done? Well, they've showed you something. They've shown you what they'll work for. When I interviewed for my job here where I work in Des Moines, it's not like I had to come up with a unique economy that was going to work for me. I just had to figure out, are you going to pay me in dollars and how much? Right? My economy, just like yours, pretty simple. We all have an economy, and kids are no different. We talked earlier in one of our earlier podcasts about how kids will put an asphalt roof on my house as a metaphor. Okay, so calm down. In August, which is super hot in Iowa, and all I have to give them in exchange is something that acknowledges their economy. So like a piece of trash from the Dollar General store or some candy. Like they'll do a great many things to get access to something that acknowledges their economy. Tangibly motivated kids tip their cards. They tip their cards. They show you these are the things that I'll do anything to get. They establish their economy. And when they do this, your answer doesn't have to be to deny their economy completely. You have to acknowledge it and use it like a jiu-jitsu wrestler uses jiu-jitsu to take their opponent to the floor. You use the force of the person coming at you to take them to the floor. Step number 1 is to understand their economy. What will they work for? You and I work for money and time off and attention or whatever it is. Kids work for really dumb stuff. They work for really dumb stuff. And sometimes the stuff that they really want to work for, they bang their head or they bite or they do whatever they do. Sometimes that stuff can actually be given to them. They can access that stuff in reasonable increments if you acknowledge it ahead of time and plan accordingly, which brings us to our next step when you're dealing with a tangibly motivated child. The question that you have to ask yourself here is this something they can have? Right? Like, is this something they can have? Let's say they really are really tangibly motivated by something super dangerous, like a knife or like a like firecrackers. If it's something that they cannot have access to, then you don't have to go any further. Then your strategy stops right here. The answer is no. It's no all day. It's no in every way, and you can do whatever you want. It's never going to change to a yes. Shake the magic 8 ball as much as you want, my friend. You're never going to turn a no into a yes if it's something that you cannot reasonably have access to. But is this something they can have access to? If the answer is yes, then your finishing move is much closer than you think, and you have the information necessary to take them down. The third step is access. Can you define what they will need to do to get access to the thing that they most want, right? We've already determined that the thing that they most want is something that they can have, right? We're not talking about, firecrackers or knives. We're talking about something that's potentially reasonable. Maybe it's a device. Maybe it's an application. Maybe it's some gum. Maybe it is some garbage from the Dollar General store. We don't really know, but can you use this to your advantage? And what I want you to understand here is that there's 2 ways to think about this, okay? And both of them can be explained with an accordion. This is an accordion, okay? I've got 2 goals in 2026. Number 1 is to learn how to break dance. I mean, and not like the kind of break dancing when you do it at a wedding, people are like, wow, is that guy a professional break dancer? That kind of break dancing. And my second goal for 2026 is to learn how to play this. I'm doing pretty good so far, right? It's hard to find people who can teach you this instrument. So if you know anybody in the Des Moines area, drop it in the comments. I'd like to have their help. But there's 2 ways to understand a tangibly motivated person as it relates to using their economy to your advantage to help them. The first way is Grandma's way. Now, Grandma's way works like this. Accordions start tight, like this, right? This is Grandma's way. This is first you eat your vegetables, and then you can have some dessert. And see, Grandma's way starts tight, right? It starts very, very tight, real tight, and it slowly gets bigger. It's first veggies, then dessert. You know this. You're very familiar with this model, right? And most of us use this. It's easy to understand. It's if then. If you stay by the cart and you keep your hands to yourself, then I will allow you to access a phone while I grocery shop. This is a great one for single parents who can't afford pickup services, right? I just need this child to keep their hands to themselves and not be a menace to everyone in the grocery store because these groceries need to be purchased. What's the metric? Remember, the metric in that analogy is kid stays by cart is not a menace so that grocery shopping can be done. It's not, well, my kid doesn't have any screen time. That's not the metric. Right? The metric is I need to incentivize this child in such a way that they will not be a menace during a grocery shopping trip because it's necessary. I am not bribing them. I'm paying them. You eat your vegetables, I let you have some chocolate cake. Right? It's not bribing, it's payment. It's the same way that you and I are incentivized to continue to come to work. They don't bribe me to come to work. They don't show up at my house and say, Noble, you better stop doing dumb stuff. Here's money. And then why don't you come to work? Here, just take this money so they stop doing dumb stuff. No, work doesn't pay me to not be dumb. They pay me to do the thing, and then we'll pay you to do the thing. We'll pay you for your trouble, right? That is my economy. That is one way to deal with a child, is to go through the decision tree that we've discussed thus far, and then think about it using the grandma strategy. First, you eat your vegetables, and then you can have chocolate cake. You do what I need you to do, which is don't run in the grocery store. Don't be whatever it is. Don't bite people at school. Whatever it is, don't unbuckle your seatbelt. And you do those things, and I will pay you for your compliance and your hard work by allowing you to have access to something that exists within your economy. My employer doesn't pay me with suckers and stickers, right? I wouldn't work for that. I work for money. Find an economy that your child will work for and find a way to incentivize them, dangle it in front of them for the hard work of compliance. That's grandma's way, and everybody knows that, right? And it works. And there's no big safety risks here. It's for a lot of behaviors can be improved to some extent if we just lay down the swords of of saying, well, I don't want them to ever have that thing. Remember, if they can have it and if it's safe and it's accessible to them, then we can use it as a carrot to get them to move in the direction that we want them to go. And everybody wins. Everybody wins, right? Because you are in control of the incentivized process. You are the one in control of when they get paid and what work looks like for that payment. And that's all fine and good for a lot of kids. But what about if you have a kid who's aggressive? What about a kid who, you know what they'll do? They'll bang their head. They'll make themselves puke. They'll take off all their clothes. And you're like, well, but I try and tell those kids that if they keep their clothes on and they don't bang their head, I'll give them access to a device. But if I try and take the device away, like first you do this and, then I do that, they'll just keep banging their head or keep making themselves puke until I just give in and give the device. What do I do about that situation, Noble? Well, that, my friends, is what we're going to talk about now. Remember what I said. Grandma's way is taking the accordion tight. Eat your vegetables. Have some chocolate cake. Blah, 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 blah. But what about if you've got a kid who's aggressive? And that kind of strategy is not going to work. So then what do? Here's what you do. Don't get mad at me. Don't you get mad at me. I can feel you getting mad at me, okay? But the accordion, is like the taking it tight and bringing it out. That's a grandma way. But what about if you put a fun uncle in this? You put an uncle with no kids who's super fun. What do they say? Well, they're not putting any restrictions in place, right? So now we got an accordion that goes like this. You start out here. You can make sounds this way too. You take an accordion and you take it wide like this, and then you make it tight. You take away all restrictions. All the way out. No one's asking you to do anything. Hey, you know what? You want the iPad? Have it all day. You want chocolate cake? Eat it all day. You know what? You want to just stand in the corner and jump on a trampoline, and every time we make you do something different, you take all your clothes off and make yourself puke. You know what? Just stand on the trampoline all day. All day. All day. And guess what happens then? You're smart people by now. You know what I'm going to say. The metric here is clothes stay on. Head doesn't get banged. That's the metric. And so if the metric is, I don't want my child to be aggressive, what you do is you take the accordion wide and you say, okay, we are going to remove the inciting factors that result in aggression. Now you're going to hear that. You're going to say, well, wait a minute. You're just letting these kids do whatever they want. Hold on. I just recently saw this from a wonderful family in the clinic. And they have a teenager. And every time a restriction or demand was placed on the teenager, when the teenager came home from school, there would be aggression in the home. And it would be bad, scary aggression. Like big teenager, small family, bad. And the family's like, well, but there's things that we need this child to do, and there's things that we expect, and there's things that our family has to work a certain way, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, how's it working for you? And they said, well, it's working terrible. It's not working. I said, okay, do you want aggression to go away, or do you want to talk about your family dynamics and your paradigms and the things that you think need to happen? Which one? Because right now you're trying to do both and it's not working. He's winning, you're losing. I said, how about we remove aggression? Would you like to hear about how to remove aggression? They said, yes. So the first thing you do, you take the accordion wide and you let this kid do whatever they want. Now, whatever they want, meaning preferences, like iPads or phone, I don't care what it is, video games, doesn't matter. I don't care. And then immediately what happens? When that kid's doing what that kid wants to do, there's no aggression because there's no demands. And eventually what happens is you let that cook for a week or two. You give that family some peace, right? And while that's cooking, the family is coming together and deciding that what let's say it's 6 hours of unrestricted access to whatever from after school until bedtime. But you know what it's going to be 2 weeks from now? It's going to be 5 hours of unrestricted access. So now what am I doing? I'm taking the accordion tighter, a little bit tighter. And then it's instead of fighting this kid 5 hours, 6 hours every night, you're only going to fight this kid 1 hour every night. They gorge for 5 hours, but then 60 minutes, it's not just 2 hands on deck, it's 4 hands. It's all hands on deck. We are going to fight to the death. We're going to fight to, you in regards to this aggression, this self-injury, this taking your clothes off. We're going to block you. We're going to put up paths. We're going to block you from hurting us. We're going to block you from hurting yourself. We're going to block you from taking off your clothes. We're going to block you from putting your hand in your mouth and making yourself puke. And we're going to take 60 minutes and we're going to fight that to the death. Okay? And then over time, 60 minutes becomes 90 minutes. And then 90 minutes becomes 2 hours. And eventually you get that accordion squeezed back in where the kid's still getting access to the things that he or she wants, but you're also getting some wins as well because you're willing to take the other part of that evening and fight to the death because the metric is what you care most about and not style. Does that make sense? I feel like that makes sense. If the metric is no headbanging, no aggression, no screaming, then we will give you whatever you need, pay you for your trouble to not do those things, and then slowly put that in reverse until we can find that middle ground where we both kind of win. You get a little bit of what you need, I get a little bit of what I need. But make no mistake, the metric is not some paradigm. Okay, it's not some paradigm that doesn't exist, right? The reason why I think this type of strategy for a kid who's tangibly motivated, it can be really effective, is that allows you, it affords the parents the ability to fight when it's time to fight the behavior, and to not give in, right? Because if you can only fight for 15 minutes as a family against a behavior after the child's gotten what they want, now you're going to eliminate their economy for 15 minutes. You want the family to be able to do that in a way that they don't give in. There's no rolling over, because when you've got a kid who's tangibly motivated, giving in is a really bad option. Because if you give in after they get super aggressive a bunch of times, what does that tell them? All that tells the child is that you will eventually give up. It says to them, keep it up. This will work. Eventually, you do not want to send that message to a child. You'd rather have them get the message of, I'm going to do this and nobody's going to bother with me. And then when they come through the door and they remove this and they start putting demands on me, they're not going to quit. It's going to happen. No matter how many times I shake the magic 8-ball of life, it's not going to change. As a general rule, what I tell families is, listen, if you're in a spot where you can't fight this, right? You don't want to give in, but you kind of want to fight, but you don't think you have it within you to fight. You're better off to give up right away. Just hand over the thing. Don't fight today, because if you can't fight like I've just described to you, all you're going to do is reinforce that child's behavior, and they're going to learn that all I got to do is bang a little bit harder, scream a little bit louder, and they'll eventually roll over, and that magic 8-ball changes from a no to a yes. The tide will only start to turn when children understand that there's things in it for them if they comply. That's it. I know. It's simple, but it's powerful. Okay. Escape, attention, tangible. Listen, the hardest math to do in the world is the math of subtraction. It's the making of things that are simpler. It's the removal of all of the things you don't need. If it's complicated, it won't work. Make the amount of steps between you and the things you need to do to help your child in the ways that we've discussed be minimal, be short, be sweet. Make this clean and crisp. These strategies, they may not solve all your problems. I understand that there's no way I could do a podcast on a behavioral strategy that would solve all your problems. There's no way that anybody on YouTube can do that, because every child is a little bit different. But if you think about these behaviors in the ways that we've discussed over the last 4 weeks, I promise you, you will win more battles than you lose. Remember, these are kids. They're going to make you mad. They're going to have difficulties, and they're not going to change overnight. But let me just close our time on this subject with some warnings and some encouragements. Warning number 1. In the town, in the city that you've established, that is your family, that is your ecosystem, there cannot be good cops and bad cops. Nobody can come home and swoop in and stop the thing and stop the discipline and stop the strategy and be like, well, they're just being mean and I'm just going to help you. And here's my phone. Let's just talk about how we feel about things. There's no good cops and bad cops in your town. There's only cops. Okay. There's only cops. All right. Just like in small town Iowa, usually there's just one. And you got to get on the same team with your partner. Agree on what to fight and what to let go. No one comes to save the day for the child. You just swap out prison guards. You just swap them out. Same rules apply. No good cop, no bad cop, only cop. Only thing you're doing is tagging in for your partner, and that's it. Kids learn that one fight is always a fight with at least two people. Okay? The sooner your child learns that there is no dividing and conquering, it's just they pick a fight with one, they pick the fight with two. If there's two people helping, if there's two people in the home raising those kids, then they pick the fight with those two people together. Okay, there's not just one person who fights while the other person watches. Okay, now for some encouragement, and then we're done for today. Remember, the goal in parenting is to shepherd their character. This is a lot more like strip mining than it is like tiptoeing through the tulips. Okay, you got to destroy the landscape and dig down to find that 1 ounce of gold that is your child's character. It's messy, it's painful, it's aggressive, and it's worth it. Parenting is not always meant to feel like this magical tiptoeing through the tulips, like like the sound of music. That's not at all what this is. It's like a cage match. It feels more like that. Okay, and you have to understand also that you are the right person for your child. It's so easy in these discussions to look at this and say, well, I should be different. If I was better, if somebody else was this kid's parent, I'd be better. No one on earth is better suited to take care of your child and to raise them into adulthood than you. Okay? You can do this. You've got to take advice. Of course, you've got to seek wisdom from other people, but you have to understand that you have embedded within you the tools to do this because they're your kid. And remember, you cannot lose if you do not quit. If you do not quit, you cannot lose. Napoleon Hill said it best. Okay? It's the truth. Next week, now that we've wrapped up our behavioral series, we're going to explore alternative therapies for ADHD, for autism, for neurodevelopmental difficulties. We're going to talk about all kinds of different things as we kind of as we move into the second half of our first season. Stem cells, herbs, vitamins, hyperbaric oxygen, camel's milk, nothing's off limit. Okay, nothing's off limits, okay? We're going to talk about these. I want you to hear my perspective. I want you to know about what they are, where they came from, what's the data, are they safe, and also, who's getting paid? You need to understand where the money is being exchanged in these things and understanding how they're being marketed to you. As always, like, subscribe, and give us a 5-star rating for crying out loud. It feels good to be nice. I will see you next week.
And that's how I grew this very good mustache.